One topic that I've never gotten a chance to really cover on the channel is breakout players. I feel like over the last 4 years, there's nothing that gets suggested more on the channel than me naming a bunch of players who could break out for the upcoming season. So we're finally going to go ahead and do that, and today I'm going to introduce you to 20 different players who I think could and will break out for this upcoming college football season, and there's two different tiers. Some of them are guys who are actually going to come out of nowhere and be good, and others are guys who are going to take the step from average to really good, something like that. But before we get started with the video, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about 20 breakout players for the 2024 college football season. Okay, so the first guy we're going to talk about is a receiver by the name of Isaiah Neyor. Coming out of Arlington, Texas, Neyor was not really that big a deal at all. He was a 2-star recruit who went to Lamar High School and was the number 380 wide receiver in the class of 2019. He decided to enroll at Wyoming, and after catching 8 passes his freshman year, he'd have a breakout season in 2021. He ended up catching 44 passes for 878 yards and 12 touchdowns, and became one of the better receivers in the 2022 transfer portal. He ended up deciding to commit to Tennessee, but then would flip to Texas for 2022. Sadly, he would suffer an injury that would hold him out for the entirety of the season, and then would only have 1 catch in 2023 as he was buried on the depth chart. Going into 2024, he is now signed to go to Nebraska, and I think he could be the top wide receiver on the team and get back to all the potential he had. Neyor is a name people have forgotten about, but just 2 years ago, he was seen as a future NFL pick for a big-time college football program. The next guy we need to talk about is TJ Guy. He's a defensive end for the Michigan Wolverines, and after the Wolverines lost a ridiculous amount of talent to this year's draft, Guy is hoping to step up. Coming out of the class of 2021, he was a top 1,000 player and the number 51 edge rusher in the country. He ended up arriving at Michigan with a decent amount of hype, and after 2 tackles in 2021 and 4 tackles in 2022, this past year he had 10 tackles with 1 sack. But it's because he's been buried on the depth chart, and now there's no Michigan football defensive player who's getting more spring chatter than TJ Guy. He was stuck behind 2 NFL guys, and right now he's projected as the next great Michigan defensive end and someone who will absolutely blow up onto the college football scene. After the Notre Dame Fighting Irish lost their superstar running back Audric Estime to the NFL, Jeremiah Love looks to fill in next. After going to Christian Brothers College in St. Louis, Jeremiah Love was the number 5 running back and a top 100 player in the class of 2023. Love was so good as a freshman that he got to split time with Jabron Payne as the backup, running the ball 71 times for 385 yards and a touchdown. As we head into 2024, they will need a new running back 1, and I think there's a good chance that Jeremiah Love could take over. Yes, there's Jabron Payne too, but I'm putting my faith in Jeremiah Love, and he could be the next great Notre Dame running back. It seems like Georgia has put an endless amount of talent into the NFL over these last few years, especially on the defensive side of the ball. At one point, Raylan Wilson was the next big thing, as according to 24/7 Sports, he was a 5-star recruit and the 21st best player in the class of 2023. He went to Lincoln High School in Tallahassee, Florida, and Raylan got an opportunity to play a little bit as a freshman. In total, he had 15 tackles, 9 of which were solo, and he would end up getting in garbage time. Just like TJ Guy, Georgia fans have been buzzing about how good Raylan Wilson could be, and he's expected to start this upcoming fall and maybe follow in the footsteps of guys like Roquan Smith as the next elite superstar Georgia linebacker. The 5th guy I want to talk about is Richard Reese. Coming out of Belleville High School in Texas, Richard Reese was just your average 3-star recruit. He decided to end up signing with Baylor after being ranked as the number 58 back in his class, and instead of waiting on the bench, Reese would blow up right away for the Bears. As a freshman, he ran for 972 yards and 14 touchdowns, and was almost up there with Quinshon Judkins as the most impressive freshman running back in the country. But Baylor was not very good in 2023, and Reese got hurt, so he kind of fell off. He only had 306 yards and 2 touchdowns, but still had over 60 carries, and now going into 2023, I expect him to not only bounce back, but be one of the best running backs in the Big 12 and get his name back to national relevance. I feel like no one was even talking about him as a freshman regardless, but Richard Reese is a name that you will know soon. After that, we have to go over to Mizzou and talk about Dalen Carnell. Coming out of high school, Dalen Carnell was a 3-star recruit and ended up playing for Ben Davis, a local powerhouse. He was a consistent top 500 player in the country, and as he came to Mizzou, he had 3 tackles as a freshman in 2021, and then 28 tackles and 3 picks, including a pick 6 in 2022. 2023 though was his breakout season, as last year he finished with 51 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and also a pick 6 against Tennessee. As Ennis Rakestraw and Chris Abrams-Draine both go off to the NFL, Dalen Carnell should be the best player in Missouri's secondary, and many projecting him to have a big fall, in which he could play his way into day 2 of an NFL draft selection and be an all-conference player for them. Going over to the Big Ten, I want to introduce you guys to Donovan McCulley. Coming out of Indianapolis, just like Carnell, he went to Lawrence North High School, and McCulley was actually a 4-star quarterback. He's one of the best high school quarterbacks the state of Indiana has seen in quite some time, but despite being a top 230 player, he would never really play quarterback at Indiana. He got 1 start in 2021 against Maryland, but after that, he made a move to receiver. He was limited in 2022 with just 16 catches, but this past year, despite an awful offense, McCulley ended up catching 48 passes for 644 yards and 6 touchdowns. Despite getting big offers out of the portal, McCulley decided to return and play for Coach Cignetti at Indiana, and now many are expecting McCulley to be an 1,000-yard receiver in a revamped Indiana offense, and he could play his way into being an NFL player. And I just want you guys to know his name because he could be next up. Going to a guy who was also a quarterback recruit but stuck with it coming into college, and that is Kyron Drones. After going to Shadow Creek High School in Texas, Kyron Drones was the number 28 quarterback and a 4-star recruit in the class of 2021. He would arrive at Baylor with some significant hype, but being stuck behind Gary Bohannon and Blake Shapen, Drones eventually would decide to transfer after just completing 14 passes and 1 touchdown at Baylor. He ended up going over to Virginia Tech, where this past year he split time with Grant Wells, but took over by the end of the season. He ended up throwing for 2,000 yards with 17 touchdowns, but also ran for over 800 yards and 5 scores. With Virginia Tech's poor schedule, some think there's a dark horse chance Virginia Tech could make a run at the college football playoff, and that Drones could become a household name. Do I think he's NFL? Probably not, but Drones is a guy you need to know about and could be the next great quarterback for Virginia Tech. Speaking of guys who are well known, Nyland Green was a huge deal coming out of high school. Going to Newton High School in Covington, Georgia, Nyland Green was the number 19 player in the class of 2021 and a 5-star talent. Immediately he would arrive at Georgia as the next great defensive back, but so far in his time with the Bulldogs, he's not really done much. He had 2 tackles in 2021, 4 in 2022, and only 7 in 2023. That also resulted in just 2 pass deflections in 3 years, and Nyland Green would decide to enter the transfer portal and commit to Purdue. I'm not sure what the Purdue-Georgia connection is, but he followed a couple of other Georgia guys there, and Nyland Green will likely start right away, and I think he's going to finally live up to his 5-star talent. The pressure will be off of him, he'll be the main guy, and all that talent he had as a 5-star in high school I think will finally show, and I think his name will get back into the limelight. Going across the country to Arizona, the Wildcats have had a couple of good receivers the last few years, with Dorian Singer, Tedero McMillan, and most recently Jacob Cowing all being pretty big names there. But one guy to watch out for is Kevin Green Jr. After being a 4-star receiver coming out of Mission Hills, California, Kevin Green would end up going to Arizona, and then this past year as a freshman, he caught 8 passes for 97 yards. With superstar quarterback Noah Fafita back and Tedero McMillan, the Wildcats will need a secondary receiver to step up, and Kevin Green is primed for that. He was a big deal, and he can establish himself as one of the best receivers in the Big 12 this upcoming fall. Auburn is known for their big-time running backs, as there are just too many to count over the last few years. Jeremiah Cobb, though, looks like he's going to be the next big thing. Coming out of Montgomery Catholic Prep High School in Alabama, Cobb was a huge deal. He was the number 11 running back in the country and a top 200 player in the class of 2023. Despite being young, Cobb got an opportunity to play right away for the Tigers, running the ball 33 times for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also caught 2 out of the backfield, and many are already talking about how he will be running back 1 this upcoming fall and will be the next big thing. He's a guy to watch out for, and I'm super pumped to see what he's going to do this season. Finally, the last guy I want to talk about is Lenoris Sellers. Coming out of South Florence High School in South Carolina, Sellers was one of the most fascinating 2023 recruits. After blowing up late, he was eventually ranked a 4-star recruit, but no one really knew about him. As a true freshman at South Carolina, he would back up Spencer Rattler, but actually played really well. He had a couple of dynamite plays, including a huge run against Vanderbilt and an insane pass in garbage time, and despite them bringing in a transfer quarterback from Auburn, Lenoris Sellers has already been named the starter, and he's got a great arm, is super athletic, and is going to try to establish himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. While there might be some growing pains, he's a name I want to introduce you guys to. We still have a couple of players to go through, and the first guy I want to talk about is Kevin Coleman. Coming out of high school, he was seen as the next big thing out of St. Louis, as well at St. Mary's, Kevin Coleman had offers from every school in the country and was a 5-star recruit. Eventually, he pulled a signing day shocker and along with Shedeur Sanders, ended up committing to Jackson State. As a freshman at Jackson State, he ended up catching 33 passes for 510 yards and 3 touchdowns, but after Coach Prime left to take the Colorado job, he would decide to enter the portal. He went to Louisville this past season and paired alongside Jamari Thrash. These were the top 2 receivers on the team. Coleman caught 26 passes for 362 yards and 2 touchdowns, but so far has been underwhelming in his career. He decided to enter the portal for a second time and will now go to Mississippi State, where he will play for Jeff Levy and I think be the #1 target in this offense. Coleman, I think, is going to live up to his 5-star status and finally make his way into the mainstream. Last year, no one really would have predicted that Mitchell Evans would be the best receiver for Notre Dame. Coming out of Wadsworth High School in Ohio, I hope I said that right, Mitchell Evans was not the typical big-time tight end recruit that Notre Dame's used to getting. He was top 500, but he was ranked as the number 23 tight end in the nation. After Evans did nothing in 2021 and 2022, he burst onto the scene with 29 catches for 422 yards and a touchdown. The most impressive part about Evans was that he caught everything that went his way, and it always seemed that he was open. Sadly, he went down with a season-ending injury, but Mitchell Evans I think will have a ginormous 2024 season, become a huge name in their offense, and be the next Notre Dame tight end to get drafted to the NFL. Going down to the SEC, the Tennessee Volunteers need a new running back, and luckily, Dylan Sampson is there to take over the role. After going to Dutchtown High School in Louisiana, Sampson was the number 24 running back in the country and a 4-star recruit. He arrived at Tennessee and ended up running for 400 yards and 6 touchdowns as a freshman. This past year, his role expanded despite being stuck in a 3-headed monster and ended up finishing with 604 yards and 7 touchdowns. With both Jabari Small and Jalen Wright off to the NFL, Sampson is now the #1 option for Tennessee, and I think he's going to have a monster season. I honestly think he could be a first-team All-SEC running back, and he's a guy you need to study up on now. We now have 5 more players to talk about, and the first one we're going to talk about is Arian Smith. Georgia's had some decent receivers over the last few years, but Smith is expected to take a huge jump in 2024. Coming out of Lakeland High School, Arian Smith was a top 50 player and the number 7 wideout in the class of 2020. So far, he's kind of been buried on the bench as he caught 2 passes in 2020, 3 in 2021, 7 in 2022, and 8 in 2023. If he's ever going to live up to his status, it has to be now, as he's been in that receiver room longer than pretty much anybody. He'll be alongside both Dominic Lovett and Oscar Delp, plus their transfer London Humphreys, but I think Arian has a chance to be the second guy on the team and finally break out to his big-time status. We also have a couple of running backs to finish the video, as we can't talk about Texas football without CJ Baxter. The last 2 years, Texas has had the #1 running back drafted, as it was first Bijan Robinson and then last year Jonathan Brooks. While CJ Baxter won't be eligible for this year's draft, he was a huge deal. He was considered the #1 running back in the class of 2023 and a 5-star player. Despite them already having Jaden Blue, Baxter ran for 659 yards and 5 touchdowns last year, and I expect him to become a superstar in 2024. He'll need to be, as Texas is hoping for a national championship, and Baxter will get the most amount of reps and I think make himself into a top 10 back in college football. We also have to talk about another quarterback, and that is Garrett Nussmeier. People have been talking about him for quite some time, as he's the son of Doug Nussmeier, and after going to Marcus High School in Texas, he fell in love with LSU, and they were the first team on him. Despite him being a top 20 quarterback and a 4-star recruit, Nussmeier turned down every other offer and went to LSU. He'd arrive in 2021, and so far has just played in mop-up duty. He had 2 touchdowns in 2021, 5 touchdowns in 2022, and then 4 touchdowns in 2023. He played in the SEC Championship against Georgia, and now Nussmeier will take over as the starting guy. Many are expecting him to be the next great LSU quarterback, and following in the footsteps of Jaden Daniels will not be easy, but Nussmeier will be up for the challenge, and I think he's going to be one of the biggest names in the country this year. After Oregon lost Bucky Irving to the NFL, they now need a new running back to step up and become a huge deal. The guy everyone is talking about is Jordan James. Coming out of Oakland High School in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Jordan James is a 4-star recruit and a top 15 back in the class of 2022. As a true freshman, James showed his potential as he had 5 touchdowns in garbage duty, and then this past year in 2023, James became the secondary option to Irving and ran for nearly 800 yards and 12 combined touchdowns. Now Jordan James will be the guy in Oregon's offense, and I expect him to follow in the great lineage of Ducks backs and become one of the top running backs in the Big Ten and in the country. Finally, the last guy we get to talk about in today's video, it has been a long video so far, is Jamarion Miller. After going to Tyler Legacy High School in Texas, Jam Miller was at one point a 5-star player. he ultimately settled in the back half of the top 100 and was consensusly ranked as a top 6 back in the nation. He was a part of the class of 2022, and as a true freshman at Bama, ended up having 2 total touchdowns. Last year, his carries increased, but both his yards, his average, and his touchdown number went down. But now as Jace McClellan and Roydell Williams were both gone, Jam Miller will probably be the number 1 Bama running back. He'll split time with Justice Haynes, but Jam Miller could establish himself as one of the better backs in the SEC and be the next great player to come out of the Crimson Tide. So yeah, today we talked about 20 players who I think could break out, who maybe you didn't know or maybe you did know, I don't know. But that's what we did. We talked about 20 breakout players, and many of you are going to want a part 2, or you're going to want it to be based on position, and I'm already working on some new ones. So if you have a player who you think will break out and deserves to be in a video, let me know down below. Leave a like, check out all my videos on the end screen, and I hope to see you guys again soon. But until next time, peace.